today we will be learning about multiplying decimals using partial products. So let's get started with number 1. For number 1, we have 3 and 2/10 times 1 and 8/10. So what we're going to do is use this box to find our partial products and to find our answer. So for each number that we have in the problem, we have 3 and 2/10 and then we have 1 and 8/10. We're going to split them up by place value. So let's look at 3 and 2/10 first. So let's look, what digit do we have in the ones place and what digit do we have in the tens place? Well, we have a 3 in the ones place and the value of the 3 in the ones place is just 3. And then we have a 2 in the tenths place, so the value of the 2 in the tenths place is 0.2. So we're going to write this on our square. We have 3 and 0.2. We're going to break up our number. Then the same thing goes for 1 and 8/10. We have a 1 in the ones place and an 8 in the tenths place. So we will break up this number as well. So 1 and then we'll do 8/10. So now that we have our numbers broken up on our square, we are going to multiply them together. So when you're multiplying in these boxes, you always need to look to see what number is on top and what number is to the side. Those are the numbers you will be using to multiply in each box. So for this box right here, box number 1, we are going to look up top. I see a 3, and we're going to multiply it by 1, the number to the side. So 3 times 1 is 3. Now let's move to the second box over here. Let's look up top. Let's look to the side. What number should I multiply? I should do 1 times 2/10. And then 1 times 2/10 is 2/10. Now let's go to our third box here. We look up and to the side. We need to do 3 times 8/10, which I know 3 times 8 is 24, and I have to move my decimal in 1 time. So it's 2 and 4/10. And then finally our last box. Look up and to the side. We have 8/10 times 2/10. So 8 times 2 is 16. I have to move my decimal in 2 times. So my answer is 1600ths. So now the 4 numbers that I've circled are the partial products. Now to find our answer, we have to add these partial products together. So let's line them up and add them together. So remember, one important thing when you're lining up these numbers is to line up your decimal points. Otherwise, you will not get the correct answer. So for 3, I wrote 3.00. And then I'm going to go to box number 2, which is 2/10. And then for box number 3, we have 2 and 4/10. And for box number 4, we have 1600ths. Now you see all these empty spaces here. I'm just going to fill them in with zeros so that I can see the whole thing and it makes it easier for me to add. So let's add them up. We have 6 here, 4 plus 2 plus 1 is 7, and then 3 plus 2 is 5. So my answer to 3 and 2/10 times 1 and 8/10 is 5 and 7600ths. Let's try another example. Number 2, we have 2 and 5/10 plus 1 and 2/10. So let's break up these numbers and put them on our box. So we have 2 and 5/10, and then we have 1 and 2/10. Now let's find the partial products for each box. So remember, you look up and to the side to see what numbers to multiply. So the first one would be 2 times 1, which equals 2. Then for the next one, we have to look up and to the side. It would be 5/10 times 1. Remember, anything times 1 is itself, so it would be 5/10. For the next box, look up to the side. We have 2 times 2/10. So 2 times 2 is 4. Move my decimal in 1 time, so it's 4/10. And then up and to the side for the last box, we have 5/10 times 2/10. 5 times 2 is 10. We have to move our decimal in 2 times, so it's 10/100ths. Now let's add all of our partial products together. So we have 2 plus 5/10 plus 4/10 plus 10/100. So I'm going to fill in zeros to help me add. So we have 0, 10, so we have to carry a 1 and 3. So 2.2 and 5/10 times 1 and 2/10 gives me the answer of 3. Now when I write my answer, I could write it as 3.00 or I could just write it as 3. Both will work. Let's try one more example. Here we have 1 and 3/10 times 1 and 8/10. So let's break them up and put them on our square. So we have 1 and 3/10 and then 1 and 8/10. So remember, you multiply with the numbers up and the numbers to the side. So the first box will be 1 times 1, which equals 1. Then for the next box, we have 1 times 0.3 or 1 times 3/10, which will give us 3/10. Then we have 1 times 8/10, which will give us 8/10. And then finally we have 3/10 times 8/10. So 8 times 3 is 24. I have to move my decimal in 2 times, so it's 24/100. So let's add all these partial products together. We have 1, then we have 3/10, and we have 8/10, and then we have 24/100. So let's add them up. We have 4, 8, plus 2 plus 3 is 13, and 1 plus 1 is 2. So our answer to 1 and 3/10 times 1 and 8/10 is 2 and 34/100. This is how you can use partial products to multiply two decimals.